authentic Jimi Hendrix tone and a modern, affordable amp. That's the promise of the PRS HDRX 20. But let's take a close look. A loud 20-watt amp is the sweet spot for many of us. Lightweight and perfect for clubs. And even for bigger shows, you can keep the stage volume reasonable, let the PA do the heavy lifting. Now in 2018, Paul Reed Smith and PRS amp designer Doug Sewell had the opportunity to study one of Jimi's personal Marshalls. Well, using that amp's tonal signature as a guide, PRS created the HDRX series amps. Initially, there was a 100-watt version and a 50-watt version, both made in Maryland, and both quite expensive, with the 50 coming in at $2,900 and the 100 going for about $3,150. But then they created the 20-watt version, and to make it accessible, they opted to have it built in Indonesia, which resulted in the very reasonable price of just $799. So let's check it out. Thanks to the clever layout, there's a fair amount of flexibility here. Now starting on the right after the input, is a pair of controls labeled bass volume and treble volume. And it's in these two knobs where much of the magic is found. Basically, you have both the treble and the darker normal channel of a vintage style Marshall, but bridged internally, with the treble volume and bass volume adjusting the gain of each, allowing for all the flavors you'd get on the vintage amp without having to jumper the channels with a patch cable as you did on the originals. Now next to those is the modern convenience of a master volume. So when you get the two channels balanced the way you like, you can bring it up to whatever level you need. There's also a bright switch, which only affects the bright channel. After that, you get a global tone stack, treble, mid, and bass. There's also a high mid-gain switch, which adds a bit of cut. And after that, we have a presence control, which adds overall brightness, and that affects both channels as well. Now, around the back, there are speaker jacks for 4, 8, and 16 ohms, tube bias jacks, a fuse holder, an input for a standard power cable, and that's about it. Now, this model uses 5881 power tubes, which are a good choice since they seem to give a bolder, thicker sound than the EL84s or 6V6s commonly used in 18 to 20 watt amps, and then a trio of 12AX7 preamp tubes. Now I should mention these amps stay true to their vintage inspiration and don't include an effects loop. Normally, I don't care, but I do prefer a loop for adding reverb to a non-reverb amp. Still, reverb in front is doable, so certainly not a deal breaker. Well, let's plug it in and see what we get. Okay, I've got an SM57 pointed ever so slightly off axis, about 3 inches from the grow cloth. And as is standard practice, I'm starting off with everything right at noon, with the exception, of course, of the master volume. I need to keep the volume levels down to a reasonable level in here. This is neck pickup. Really nice clean tone. All right, let's drop the treble channel down. I'll take it down to about 9 o'clock, and I'll bring the bass channel up to about 3 o'clock. That is very much like the smoother, darker sound of a Marshall's normal channel. A vintage Marshall I'm talking about. Now let's do the opposite. Bass channel at 9 o'clock. Treble channel at 3 o'clock. so far I have to admit, I kind of prefer an even amount of each channel. Remember, we started here. Maybe even just a little more of the bass channel for a single coil guitar. I didn't realize, but I have actually had the bright switch engaged, which is brightening up the treble channel only. Let's try it without it. Okay, with the bright switch off, let's turn the treble channel down to about 9 o'clock and the bass channel up to about 3 o'clock. All right, let's do the opposite. Bass channel on 9 o'clock. Treble channel on 3 o'clock. That's very nice. Try bringing in the bright switch, which remember only affects the treble channel. I have to admit that would help it cut through a bit. Okay, I've turned the individual channel gains back to 12 o'clock. I've turned off the bright switch. And I'm going to start with the bass knob on the global EQ. Now let's turn that up to about, let's just go on up to somewhere a little over 3 o'clock. All right, let's put it back at noon. Let's turn the treble up to about the same place. Right around 3 o'clock, maybe a little more. In the middle. Okay, let's crank the two channel volumes a bit. I'll turn the bass volume and the treble volume up a little over 3 o'clock. You can see there we're getting some hair. How about the upper mid gain switch? Well, as you can see, there are really quite a few tonal possibilities here. And you can get all kinds of subtle shadings. All right, let's try some pedals. Here's the Sweet Honey Overdrive. And there's a Klon clone. All right, let's set it up how I would prefer it, at least how I'm hearing it in the room. Take the presence back down to maybe just under halfway. Let's drop the mid control just a little bit. Bring the bass volume up just a hair higher than the treble volume. And let's see what we get. Let's try it on position 2. Well, I have to tell you, I like this amp quite a lot. I'm a big fan of vintage Marshalls, and this captures that sound pretty well, especially for a small, lightweight 20-watt amp. Now, it's not super cheap, but it's certainly not expensive either, and I'm not sure you can buy anything else at that price that really does the job quite as well as this does. Now, of course, it's not a modern high-gain amp. I mean, you can get a fair amount of hair even at low volumes with the Master. But trust me, if you crank this up in a live setting, get a little more volume, get the power tubes cooking, it'll sing pretty nice. And it does beautifully with pedals, as you heard. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Hit that bell notification icon so you'll know when the next one drops, and I will see you then.